Welcome to iGlobal, the big Indian money show, unleashing the entrepreneur in you. My name is Sachin Nanda, and I will be the compare for this fantastic panel discussion. I myself have built two businesses, both exited, and today I work in private equity and I sit as an investor and a non-executive director on several healthcare and health tech boards. With me, I have a fantastic panel. I have Shalini Kemka, I have Shiv Hadia, Tinesh Chaya, and Pragnesh Madhvadia. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Yes, hiya.
Fantastic. Good to have you all. What we'll do, let's get straight into it. I'm going to start with you, Shiv. Shiv, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about your business and how long you've been at it.
Okay, so I used to work for a corporate in a grad scheme, and then in 2012, I decided to leave that because I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I went traveling for about 7 or 8 months. Unfortunately, I was called back early because my mum had a heart attack, and I started to think about how we can create, financial security. Because if you've had a heart attack, you can't work. And that's how I sort of fell into the business that I'm in right now, which is helping people who live in London to invest outside of London. So I've been doing that since 2013, 14 time, and yeah, that's basically the story.
No, thank you for that. Tinesh, let's come over to you, Tinesh. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Sure. So my name is Tinesh. I've been cybersecurity for coming up to 18 years, but I was a corporate guy for about 15 of those years. And then about 3.5 years ago, I got made redundant, and I had a decision to make that morning, and I decided to actually jump off the cliff, as they say, and begin my entrepreneurial journey. And currently, I run a couple of startups, all within cybersecurity.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for being on the panel. Let's come to Shalini. Shalini, tell me a little bit about your business and how long you've been on this journey.
Thank you very much, Sachin. Nice to be speaking to you. I started E2E. It stands for Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur Exchange. I started it in 2011. So in May this year, it will actually be our 10-year anniversary. So I've been running it for nearly 10 years. Prior to that, I was in private equity. So like many of the people on our group today, I've got a background in investing. And historically, I ran trade finance for Lloyds Banking Group. So I've had a corporate background as well as an entrepreneurial. My first business, I helped to co-found the first company in the world to trade letters of credit online. And I started it with, I can't take the full credit for it, was 4 of us. Started it at the end of 1999 and we sold out in 2004. So my background is everything to do with entrepreneurship, really. So in addition to running E2E, I work as a deal maker for the UK government. So I help entrepreneurs from around the world who want to be located in the UK, who are tech entrepreneurs, to move their headquarters here, and the idea behind that is the UK is a great centre to grow internationally, to bring them here. And I sit as a business advisor on the Mayor of London's Business Advisory Board, and I'm on the supervisory committee with a lady called Baroness Kramer, who's an amazing lady on the board of a business called Market Finance by Anil Stocker.
Fantastic. Thanks, Shalini. That's super. And last but not least, Pragnesh, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Wow, to follow Shalini's impressive CV. So I started my business 12 years ago, actually. As a newly qualified solicitor, so I knew I wanted to do law always. I just knew I didn't want to work for someone else. And so, 2008, we started the business just as the recession started, which was actually a good time. And we built it up. Now we have 3 offices, 100 people across the offices. And, we have a brilliant portfolio of clients and partners that we work with, which has been a great experience.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So everybody, welcome. Let's get straight into it. And one of the things I think the key things about an entrepreneur is the mindset, right? I think sometimes the key thing that defines an entrepreneur, it's their motivation. It's you have to have some seriously high levels of motivation, and it's like a full commitment. You've got to live, breathe sweat your ideas, right? I mean, it is full on. So Shiv, I'm going to come to you first because you alluded to something in your intro there. Just expand a little bit around what was it that really gave you the motivation and maybe still continues to give you the motivation. But in those early days, when you jumped into this, you had no idea whether you're going to be successful or not. An entrepreneur never really does. But obviously, where did that motivation come from, and what triggered it?
Yeah. And so I think mine was more of a journey into entrepreneurialism as opposed to, I just decided one day I want to be an entrepreneur. I started off, as I said, my mum had a heart attack the year after, my dad had a heart attack, and obviously there was something in the water we were drinking. But, ultimately I decided that I needed to, my parents, as I'm sure a lot of people watching this, my parents had done everything for me. And I wanted to make sure that I could take care of them. But I didn't want to be tied down by taking care of them. And I thought to myself, in fact, it wasn't even a thought to let me go and do this. It was like, well, I'm in the UK. I don't have a job because I've just come back from traveling. I'm going to go and solve this problem for them. I'm going to go and invest some money. I'm going to find out what the investments are, invest some money, create some income so that they can enjoy a great retirement. And then sort of 2 years after that, and I'm a Facebook generation person, so I was posting a lot of this stuff on Facebook. And after a while, people started naturally coming to me saying, what are you doing up in Leeds? Can you help us invest in property as well? What kind of returns are you making? And so naturally, I started helping one or two people. And before you knew it, I was like, well, we might as well set ourselves up as a company.
Fantastic.
And
so originally, Shiv, you started just actually helping your family out, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you successfully did that, and then the word spread.
Yeah, 100%. So you're right. I didn't have this one day that I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. It was very kind of a gradual. And then I suppose one day when I started investing in marketing to try and get other people, that was probably, if I look back at it, that was the day that I decided, right, we're going to do this for other people professionally, as opposed to, just for friends and family.
Brilliant. No, thank you so much for that. And what the others? Shalini, do you want to come in here? Do you want to share some of your motivation as to, because you've done this twice now. So tell me a little bit about what drives you.
I think for me, the first time was because I had a really nice idea, a good idea, because trade finance assets weren't traded online at that particular time. And this business that I currently run today, E2E, has been born out of the idea and my learnings, because with my first business, we did well, but we could have done a lot better. We made a lot of mistakes as well. And when I moved into private equity and I met some serious entrepreneurs, people like Gareth Williams, who founded Skyscanner. I was working for a business called LDC, Lloyds TSB Development Capital. It's a mid-market private equity house, and that gave me the opportunity to see some really very successful people with that very strong DNA. So that's why I thought, actually, can I help others understand what the journey should look like? Because it wasn't perfect in my first time. So hence the birth of E2E. But one thing I want to say is, I don't want to over glamorize entrepreneurship. And you've talked about how tough it is, and we were talking about this earlier, is I think it's for our youth, it's a very, very important decision to try and make, is are you wanting to make it your life to be about building a business that you're very passionate about, or are you looking for something slightly more balanced? And my personal journey with E2E is there's an opportunity cost. There's an opportunity cost to your personal life. And my brother, who's also very, very successful, much more successful than me, he's now going to be chief executive of a company called Simply Health. And I compare, how siblings compare. And I'm always wondering, actually, you have to know in your heart and mind that you've got a business that's properly scalable, that you can do financially well in, and only then endeavor on that journey. Don't endeavor on a journey without a clear business plan and an execution plan, and just fall into it is the sort of the key snippets of advice I'd like to give to our youth. However, I want to balance that with unemployment rates in the UK are going to go up after the furlough scheme stops. So we also want to encourage people to be job creators rather than job seekers. So I'm saying two things there, but I think it's very much about looking inside your own soul and working out what's the right path for yourself before you embark on a journey to run a business.
No, that's super. One of the things you touched on there was challenges, right? So, Pragnesh, I'm going to come to you here. So tell me a little bit about your motivation, but dovetail some of the early challenges you faced as an entrepreneur when you first decided, look, I'm going to have my own business, right? I'm going to go at it on my own. What were those original initial challenges you faced?
Unlike the rest of the panel, I went into law, so it's not sort of the sexiest subject or practice area, and wherever you go, you see about 50,000 lawyers. But when I started the firm, I just qualified as a solicitor, and I mean the law actually is that you can't start a firm until you have 3 years experience. So I had a partner when I first started, but I was 25 years old at the time. So in the early days, I think not knowing what I was doing was a challenge in terms of actually running a business. I mean, I knew the law, I knew how to actually, buy a house, sell a house, or buy a company, sell a house for a client, but actually running a business, and you evolve. I mean, it's not what you know that kills you, it's what you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know is the honest answer of it.
But Pragnesh, what made you go into it, right? Like what was it? Why didn't you go and join Clifford Chance or Baker McKinsey or something like that? Why did you pursue this path at such a young age?
Runs through the firm now as well. I mean, for us, we as a firm, we think we've got way too much personality to be one of the big corporates. We enjoy what we do. We enjoy each other. I kind of worked out that you spend most of your life working, not with your family. You spend most of the time working, so you kind of have to make that your family. And unless you love that and build it that way, you can't do it, because any sane person would stop. Most of the time, any sane person would stop that journey and think, actually, screw this. I can make a decent living having a job, and that's what normal people would do. You have to have a particular brand of insanity to say, no, actually, I'm going to keep going. And for the most part, everyone talks about successes. For the most part, it's not successes, it's mistakes. But you just keep going because you're too stubborn not to. And it's just sheer force of will that makes you do it. But that inside, that's you. There's no other version, right? There's no other version that will work for you.
Brilliant. No, and that's clear. That's clear. No, it's really good. Tanesh, tell me about you, because you are in a different space altogether. You're in cybersecurity. Now, I'm going to confess, I get a lot of entrepreneurs coming to me, especially those who have kind of proven their concept. They've got some VC backing, and now they're looking to get private equity involved. And I operate in the healthcare space. Now, you're in cybersecurity, and I don't understand what that is, right? So tell me a little bit about what that is, but tell me about some of the challenges you faced in setting up. And then you are also at the sharp end, because you're in that startup mode, right? That's always the sharpest end, I find. So tell me about your experiences there.
So just if I go into that, something Pragnesh said, it's so interesting because I feel like I'm the baby entrepreneur in this group, number one. But some of the things that all of you have said so far hit home so much. And also, I'm probably the oldest in the group because I'm in my middle of 40s, edging towards 50. So it's really weird. I didn't do what you guys did when you got multiples, or like Shiv said, or like Pragnesh said, you went straight into it. I actually did it the other way around, where I did corporate for 15 years. And I knew I'd outgrown it. And actually in the background, I'd kind of done little hustle businesses on the side. But really, to commit to it, I had to have a life event to happen, which was I got made redundant, which then made me at 41, I was 41 back then, 42 even. At that point, I had to make a decision. Can I do this? I've got family and commitment. I've got a wife who's that big career woman and a big top 4. So, you've got that added pressure. I've got school fees to think about, a mortgage, and then all the other peripheral things that go along with it. So I was at that place where I wish I'd started earlier, but those commitments were in there. So that's what my pressures were. But what made me do it was, I think I was just fed up. I got the corporate experience in. I could try and break the glass ceiling, because there's a glass ceiling, guys, even for us. Everybody does a glass ceiling. I didn't want to. I really didn't want to. For me at that point, it wasn't about money. Yeah, and I said it. How many times I said that? Actually, I said to my wife the other day, I've become an Uber driver, man, when it's all close up, right? And you have these days when you just think, stop it, right? I'm done. But the reality of it is, you don't. You're just having a moment, and it's compounded with COVID and all this other stuff. But then you just crap on with it. So Yeah, I just you three talking just now. I've just learned so much. Yeah, quite I've got so much to go, so much more pain to come. I forgot your question.
I was going to say, so what I'll do is, okay, and that's super interesting because we've got very different stories here, right? We've got Shiv, who kind of sort of saw an opportunity without meaning to look for an opportunity. You've got Pragnesh, who kind of knew at day dot that, look, this is what I want to do, and he's a trained lawyer, so that's what he's going to do. Shalini, you've had a super experience with LDC, and so you kind of saw and were exposed to some really high-flying entrepreneurs. And then Tinesh, very honest and very candid, right? Kind of, you'd outgrown the corporate world, and it took a life event to kind of trigger the entrepreneur, right? I want to come to this question of money, guys, right? Money. Startup capital, startup money. Now, there was another session as part of this weekend, which talks about actually funding your business. So I don't really want to go into the funding of your business. What I want to talk about is money. What advice can you give an entrepreneur in those first 1,000 days? Those first 3 years, those first the early stages. What advice would you give entrepreneurs about money? So Shalini, go on. You go first.
So firstly, I would say before you think about money, the step before the money is to make sure you've got a very strong execution plan, because it's actually not that difficult to find money when you've got a very strong business plan and when you're very credible in yourself. So that's step one.
So what does credibility look like, Shalini? Quickly, tell me what credibility looks like.
You need clear focus, ability to execute. I don't believe in writing long business plans, but a short, very clear script or information memorandum, as we call it in the investment world. But it's more about in your mindset. And Pragnesh talked about it. Is that you've got to have that inner something that keeps driving you. Are you that person? Are you willing to sacrifice? Like for Dinesh, it took a life event, but he's now running his own business. So he's made a mental decision that he's going to sacrifice everything else to build this business. And it's that mindset. And good investors can spot that person. I think they can see the people who've got that sort of DNA coupled with the business plan that goes with it. And the execution part is the difficult part. Everyone comes up with great ideas. If you take, for example, Oak North Bank and Rishi Khosla, there's so many people who've set up a bank in the past, but not everyone's been able to take it to a 3 billion valuation. It's about the execution. So that's what I'm suggesting here, is that before you start thinking about raising money, is make sure that you are absolutely credible in those things. Then in terms of taking money, there is a lot of grant support in the UK. So before going to friends and family and through your network, I would suggest that people should really look at what's already out there, because when you take a grant, you're not giving away equity. And if you start taking money from even friends and family, you have to give equity. You don't really know the valuation of your business. So my strong suggestion is that if you've got a very decent, credible business plan, there's a lot of startup grant funding. And this is one of the beauties of being in the UK with UK registered businesses, just to start on that route before you go and explore seed funding, crowdfunding, and all of the other ways of funding.
Right. In fact, on that, so maybe Tinesh, tell me, how did you in the early days fund your business? Was it through your savings, or was it through grants, or how did you get going?
So it was a couple of things. So initially, I actually bootstrapped. Remember, I'm starting my journey a little bit later. So I had some savings set aside. What I didn't prepare for was how quick those savings go. You're still living the lifestyle of that VP, but now you're looking at the price of things as opposed to, when you work for somebody. So that mental shift. But that's how I did it initially with bootstrapping. And then we got coming on these schemes. There's a government scheme for investors, which is called SCIS, which is a tax relief for investors. And so we signed up to that initially, and we raised some money through that. In fact, we're still raising through that for one of the companies. But you're absolutely right, Shalini. That's exactly what we had to do. We had to prove the value. We had to prove the mindset. I think it helped because I'm an older guy, so it's pretty much focused. They want to see that I've got, they can see I've got commitments. And so that's how we did it initially. And now we're looking and educating ourselves. And I've learned a lot of the last 7-8 months, especially since we're now raising for another company of ours, just around what the kind of things investors look for, and beyond just because remember, cybersecurity is an extremely busy space. In fact, I can tell you, because my platform that we built has found 7,000 cybersecurity companies globally, and continues to find 2 or 3 new ones every single day. And I'm one of those companies trying to go out there looking for money. So while the lion's share of those are mummy and pappy businesses, a lot of them are, either going through an accelerator or an incubator or some kind of group like that. The reality is a lot of them won't get the money, they won't get the investment, they can't, and they've just, as much as quick as my platforms finding them, they're disappearing because they just run out of money very quickly. So it's mine's a really busy space.
Super. So Shiv, I want to come to you, Shiv, because you were probably, you were just a graduate, right? And sort of were traveling. You come back to the UK, and you saw an opportunity. How did you manage your cash flow, your money in those early days? Now, you were a young man, so maybe you didn't have the mortgage in the family, but just walk us through what those early challenges were like, and what advice you would give to, again, people who are starting off the way you are.
I'm sure that the advice is what Shalini said. I wish I had known any of that stuff when I started, but for me, like I said, I wasn't going to start a business. I was going to help my parents and to set up their retirement. And so for me, it was like, well, let's just go and do it. Now, obviously, I had a little bit of savings. And by the way, one of the real kind of openers for me was when I realized that I could rent a room in Leeds for £300, all bills inclusive. £300, so just to get it into perspective, my monthly costs were £300 for that, let's say £100 for food, and another £150 or £100 for petrol. So it's like £500. I can get the whole thing done. So talking about bootstrapping, it was very, very cheap. Tinesh is looking jealous there because he's got the whole. So when I started, it was very low cost, and I think the other thing to differentiate, Shalini and Tinesh have spoken about kind of, and then probably you as well, Sachin, like building a business and then looking at the funding it through investors and then potentially even exiting. I think mine is very much kind of like a lifestyle business. I love doing what I do because I can see the impact that it's had on my family. I can see the impact that it continues to have on people that we help. And certainly the people that we typically help are people that are like, it's my first time investing. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'd love someone to help and support me. And I know that I should be investing, but I don't even have the time. Who's got the time to drive 3.5 hours up to wherever they need to be? So that all came afterwards. And even to this day, like, we haven't done any funding rounds. People have offered us money. Oh, can we invest in your bit? We don't need your investment. We're probably a much slower growing business than the rest of the people here, but I like it that way. I want to run a business where we're in charge of our own cash, we're using our own money to grow, and we're doing it slowly, and frankly, putting my own money at risk rather than putting investors' money at risk.
And that's super interesting, right? Because you've got, as an entrepreneur, you've made a conscious decision as to the journey that you want to take. Right, you're not just wavering in the wind, going from opportunity to opportunity.
Of course.
You seem to be quite focused on what you want. Great. So again, we've heard about some of the early challenges that guys faced. From a funding your business perspective is one thing, but actually growing your business. Tell me something talk about execution. What were some of the execution challenges that you'd faced in those first 1,000 days, in those first early years of your business, when really you were a young man, right? So you didn't really have the credibility or the CV maybe that people could come and back you with. So how did you do it?
Again, Shiv, first of all, you're just hungrier than anyone else around you. It is the honest answer. You try harder, you work longer, you work faster, and it's just that it's with law firms, there are, like you said, Clifford Chance. They sit at the top of the tree. They pick whatever they want. Even because I started in North London, even in that area, there were a few dominant firms. And at that time, it seemed like a million miles away that we'd get to them and their clients as well. We just wouldn't be able to actually pick those guys off. Now we're the biggest firm in the area, and it in North London, not in England, and it just worked. But it's just doing more. You have to work harder than your competition. Like Tinesh says, there are 7,000 companies out there. but so what will differentiate you? And with law firms, unfortunately, I mean, we all practice the same law. So the only two things are whether they like us more or we work harder. And, you know, we are quite likable, but more so, you know, you just put more effort into it. And that's how you then tend to differentiate yourself. And that generally, effort tends to outdo ability most of the time. And it tends to get you what you want 90% of the
Super
time.
interesting. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I want to come to another question, which I think it's important is, you know, if all of a sudden you know you have an idea and you think you want to go on your own, but you have a family, you have mortgages and school fees, so you've started life a little bit later in terms of the entrepreneurship journey. You know, so I'm going to come to you, Tanesh, because I know you said you started your journey later. Did you have to bring your family on board this journey and the risks that you took? Could you tell me a little bit about how you did that? Like, how did you, you know, what was that like? Because I think people underestimate, you know, how difficult it can be sometimes when you've already got a mortgage and family and kids. So is it possible? What did you do?
First off, it gets called a midlife crisis, right? So what do you want to do this for, right? And then the whole community rallies together. Mom, dad, uncle, aunties, what do you want to do this for, right? Then also I'm married to a very successful career woman, right? So with the pressure of the market, the pressure of me succeeding or not succeeding is one thing. The other pressure is my wife saying, you've got 12 months to do this stuff. And then after you've had your fun, come back and go get a job, right? Literally, you got that underlying pressure too. Because, you know, she is right. And you know, you're not starting at like a younger age with, you know, I love that shit, £500 outgoings, right? You know, my outgoings are a lot more than that, right? With the younger children and they're in private and all the rest of it. So that just comes because you've got to that stage in your life when they're older, and that's the commitments, right? That's what we've chosen as a family. So for then you to wake up one morning and say, I'm gonna uproot my entire way of working and the living and all of that just to appease this urge I've got, you've really got to think about that long and hard, and then prepare for it financially, mentally. You know, there's so many things. It's not just about money and making sure, you know, because sometimes it does get fractures, right? Because you're stressed, and all of the guys on this call and girls can say on this call, it does get fractures, right? You know, if you're in relationships, you're married, you've got friends, everybody loses you. They lose a chunk of you. And that's the thing. My children have lost a part of me over the last 3 years because dad's constantly always working. You know, my wife's lost a bit of me because she's already she's into her work, I'm into my work, and we're two ships in the night sometimes, right? My mum and dad have, you know, and you have to make a mental effort. Now I time block my time. Imagine that. I have to block time with my children. And it may sound a little bit odd and a bit weird, but it's something that every entrepreneur, and Pragnesh will get this, right? You've got children. You have to commit yourself to that, and for me, I have to block it in, and literally no devices, nothing. And then I can go spend. But even then, in the back of your mind, you know, you're thinking about something, and your kids, my daughters are saying, Dad, you're not listening, are you? I am. And then you've got to try and tackle from that conversation. So it is tough. Every day is tough because it's a constant hustle, as I say. But I think if you can plan it out and just be ready that it is going to be a complete emotional roller coaster, and every hour is a different feeling and emotion. And as long as you can box that, and which I try and do when I finish the call and I leave the office, and at the moment it's at home, and you walk into the kitchen or you walk into the living room, you try and get back into that zone of husband, dad, you know, whatever the role is, friend, then it kind of works. And give yourself a break as well, right? Because
You know, as my wife says, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, my wife says you're not working, so she says you're not running the country, so you know, chill out. So yeah.
Shalini, let me come to you. As a woman entrepreneur, do you have any advice or any guidance that you would say to our audience, female audience members who are kind of listening to this, thinking, well, I've got an idea, but do women face any other challenges that maybe some of my other male colleagues may not, or is that a myth now? What are your thoughts?
I think there's still a little bit of a gap between women and men, especially when it comes to fundraising. I think the statistics show that women don't raise as much money as men. I have raised money for my business, but I made a decision not to try to raise money until I absolutely had to. So I actually raised money last year, 8, 9 years in. But I don't think it's about mindset. So the fact that I'm a female, I don't see it as a negative. In fact, I see it as a positive. And I think I never ever looked at my whole career around my gender. It's more about being the best version of myself and working as hard as possible to deliver what I'm planning to do, whether I was in the corporate world or whether now in my own business. So I've never let the gender question really affect me. The reason I'm cautioning it is the statistics show differently around fundraising. But I actually think that if you have an idea as a woman, running your own business, you have to block time. So I was smiling when Dinesh was speaking because I don't have children, but I still put block time in my diary for personal time, because if I don't, that's all you're doing all the time. And actually you can become not interesting in person because your life is just around one thing rather than lots of different things. So I try to put block times in. And I think I would encourage women to run their own companies if they've got very, very great ideas. So I think that's quite a good way of, you can be at home, you don't have to be in an office environment, you can plan your life the way you want to an extent, but only to an extent. So when I started my business, I thought I'd have all the freedom around my time. Actually, you don't. But you have to plan it that way, and having your own business allows you to plan it that way. So I think
Thank
for
you
women,
for that.
yeah, we should.
Thank you. No, super. As always, time is upon us. So I'm gonna come to each of you, and I'm gonna get you to give us, your top 2 tips for our audience, right? And we have a broad audience, from young graduates who are thinking about what to do next, right the way through to people of all stages of career, thinking, I have an idea, I see a gap, can I do it? Should I do it? How do I do it, right? So maybe Pragnesh, we'll start with you. What are your top 2 tips for our budding entrepreneurs out there?
I think if you have to decide, tip number 1 is it's not about the money. I think money is important, but actually what your knowledge will get you the money 10 times out of 10. So learn what you can before you chase the money, and then the second tip follows from that, is that you kind of need to enjoy what you do. You won't enjoy it most of the time, but the times that you do, you do need to enjoy it. So you have to have fun, and whatever you're doing, you need to make it something that keeps you hooked in. And they'd be my 2 tips.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Shiv, we'll come to you next.
I think this is partly what Shalini said before, is this is all about trying to be the best version of yourself, and whether entrepreneurship is that route for you or not, that's up to you. But exactly that point, that you have to enjoy what you're doing. You're going to be working for 70% of your life, or whatever the statistic is. If you don't think that you're going to enjoy it, then don't do it. It's not, the money is not worth the drudgery of doing something that you don't enjoy doing. That's the first one. And I think the second one is you're just going to be super committed. I remember when I first started, 2012, 2013 time, I used to get up every morning and watch YouTube. I used to type in motivational videos into YouTube and just watch these things. And there was one line that always, and even to this day, I still watch these things. And it was, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe, that's when you'll be successful. It's a guy called Eric Thomas, and that line will stay with me for the rest of my life. It will stay with me. I'll tell my kids that, and all this stuff. You've got to really want it, to do something different. You can't just be like, oh, maybe I might try it. If it's something that you really want to do and you're willing to work for it, then that's the path for you then.
Brilliant. Thank you, Shiv. That's really, really useful. Shalini, your top 2 tips.
Sure. So I think before embarking on the entrepreneurial journey, I'd really suggest a lot of market research. What I mean by that is talk to a lot of people, including yourself, that this is the journey that you want to go on. And then be very, very honest around what are you good at? And the things you're not so good at, make sure that you have the business plan to surround yourself with the right people, because to run a business, you can't do it alone. You absolutely need the right team. So thinking about your own skills, and have you got the strength of character and the way to raise the money to find the right people to recruit the top team?
Super, thank you. And last but not least, Tanesh, give us your top 2 tips for entrepreneurs.
I think for me, and this is from personal experience, first and foremost, look after yourself, number 1. Because if you don't look after yourself, everything else really is immaterial, doesn't really matter. So take time out, breathe, yoga, take a minute out. It's okay, right, to do that stuff. We're allowed to do that. What's the point otherwise? And number 2, it's Pragnesh said it. It's not about the money, because it won't be about the money. And even if you have savings, you've raised or whatever, it's actually about the mental preparation you've got to have for the long journey, because you will have doubtful days, and you will have days when you're just by yourself and there's no decisions, and it's all compounding in your head. At that point, just stop, just give yourself a break, man. Take that evening off, afternoon off, and then revisit it. Because, and at the moment with COVID, as you know, every day it's a bit like that sometimes, because it's all compounded, everything slowed down. So that would be my tip. Look after yourself first.
Fantastic,
one of the last things.
Yeah, go for it, Shiv.
Someone told me was, and this was a mental switch that I had probably about 2 or 3 years ago, which is, I suppose, when I consider myself to have really become an entrepreneur. It's about, I switched from playing the short game, so trying to make money every year, to playing the long game. This is about several people have said it, about the journey, about who it makes of you as a person, not about, oh, I'm going to make this much money this year or next year or the year after. So flicking your mindset to, this is what I'm going to do, as you said, Sachin, rather than, oh, I'm just going to do this little thing and then I'll come back to my life. This is your life. How you spend your days is how you spend your life.
Fantastic. Guys, thank you so much, everybody. I've really enjoyed talking to you and listening to all of your fantastic experiences. And we've certainly had a very broad, diverse set of starting points and experiences and businesses. So once again, thank you very much to Shalini Khemka, Shiv Haria, Tanesh Chhaya, Pragnesh Modwadia. Thank you all so much.